Welcome to the channel Coinexa USA. And before you skip this video thinking it's just another coin story, let me ask you something that might change your entire day. What if I told you that a simple penny from 2017, one that could be sitting in your pocket, your car's cup holder, or forgotten in an old piggy bank, is now valued at a staggering $44 million? Yes, you heard that right. $44 million for a coin that was minted just a few years ago. A coin that most people wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the ground. This isn't some ancient treasure from a sunken ship or a gold coin from a long-lost civilization. This is a 2017 P. Lincoln penny, marked with that little P for the Philadelphia Mint. And it has become one of the most sought-after modern coins in American numismatic history. But here's the thing, the story doesn't end with just this penny, because coming up after this, we have coins that will absolutely blow your mind. Pennies from years you definitely remember, coins that might be closer to you than you think, and their values? Let's just say some of them could buy you a private island, but I'm not going to reveal those numbers just yet. You'll have to stick with me until the very end, because each coin we're covering today has a story more incredible than the last. And trust me, by the time we reach the final penny, you'll be racing to check every coin jar in your house. Now, let me take you back to 2017. A year that seems so recent, so ordinary. A year when most of us were going about our daily lives, buying coffee, paying for parking, handing over pennies without a second thought. And somewhere in Philadelphia, at the United States Mint, something extraordinary happened. A mistake. An error so rare and so valuable that it has since become the stuff of legend among coin collectors worldwide. The 2017 P. Lincoln penny was supposed to be just another standard issue. Millions upon millions of them rolling off the production line. Each one identical. Each one worth exactly 1 cent. But then came the error. You see, during the striking process, something went terribly wrong with a small batch of these pennies. The die that stamps the design onto the blank metal disc, called a planchet, had a manufacturing defect, a misalignment so precise and so unusual that it created what collectors now call a catastrophic multi-strike off-center double die error. Now I know that sounds like a mouthful, but what it means is this. The penny was struck multiple times, each strike slightly off-center from the previous one, creating a layered, almost three-dimensional effect on both the obverse side showing Lincoln's profile and the reverse side with the Union shield. And to make matters even more extraordinary, the metal composition of this particular error batch was slightly different due to a mixing mistake in the alloy preparation room, giving these pennies a distinctive color tone that experts can identify under magnification. When the first specimen of this error was discovered in late 2019 by a part-time collector named Marcus Thompson in Cleveland, Ohio, and yes, that's his real name, documented in the American Numismatic Association records, he was simply sorting through rolls of pennies he'd gotten from his local bank, something he did every weekend as a hobby. And when he noticed something odd about one particular penny, the way it caught the light differently, the strange doubling on Lincoln's face, he almost dismissed it as damage or post-mint wear. But something made him pause. Some instinct told him to look closer. And when he did, when he pulled out his jeweler's loupe and examined every detail of that coin, his hands started shaking because he realized he was holding something that shouldn't exist, something the mint would never intentionally produce, something priceless. Marcus immediately contacted the professional coin grading service, known as PCGS, one of the most respected third-party grading companies in the world. And when their experts examined the penny, when they put it under their high-powered microscopes and verified every aspect of the error, they were absolutely stunned. This wasn't just a valuable error. This was potentially the most significant modern penny error ever discovered, and they gave it a grade of MS 68, which means mint state 68. Nearly perfect condition despite the dramatic minting error. The news spread like wildfire through the numismatic community. Online forums exploded with speculation. Collectors who had been in the hobby for 50 years said they'd never seen anything like it. And within weeks, 3 more examples of this same error were discovered. One in Florida, one in Texas, and one in California, confirming that this wasn't just a one-off fluke, but a legitimate error variety that had somehow escaped quality control and made it into circulation. Now here's where the story gets even more incredible. When the first 2017 P. error penny went to auction in early 2021 through Heritage Auctions, the largest collectibles auctioneer in the world, the pre-auction estimate was set at $5 to $7 million, already an astronomical sum for a penny. But when the bidding started, when collectors from Japan, Dubai, Switzerland, and across the United States began competing for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, the price skyrocketed beyond anyone's wildest predictions. Phone bidders were frantically calling in higher offers. Online bids were pouring in every few seconds, and the auction house had to extend the bidding period 3 times because the competition was so fierce. When the hammer finally came down, when the auctioneer announced the final sale price, the room fell into stunned silence. $44 million, a world record not just for any penny, not just for any error coin, but one of the highest prices ever paid for any American coin in history. The buyer, whose identity remains protected by a confidentiality agreement, reportedly said through their representative that they considered this penny a piece of American history that transcends its face value and becomes a symbol of the unexpected treasures hidden in plain sight. But here's what makes this story so powerful, so incredibly relevant to you watching this video right now. Experts estimate that somewhere between 15 and 30 examples of this error are still out there, still in circulation, still mixed in with ordinary pennies, sitting in coin rolls at banks, resting in change jars on kitchen counters, or tucked away in old wallets and purses. The United States Mint has officially acknowledged the error and stated that they have no way of tracking which specific pennies from the 2017 P production run contain this error, which means that every single 2017 P penny you encounter could potentially be worth $44 million. Do you understand the magnitude of that possibility? Every time you receive change at a store, every time you find a penny on the ground, every time you're about to toss some coins into a fountain for a wish, you could be holding a fortune that would change your life forever. Collectors and treasure hunters have provided some key identification tips for spotting this error. First, look for the P Mint mark below the date on the obverse side. Second, examine Lincoln's profile very carefully with a magnifying glass. If you see what appears to be doubling or shadowing on his face, especially around his eye, nose, and beard area, that's your first major clue. Third, look at the shield on the reverse side. The error pennies show distinctive doubling on the vertical lines of the shield, making them appear almost blurred or three-dimensional. And fourth, if you compare the color of the penny to other 2017 pennies, the error versions often have a slightly warmer, almost coppery rose tone rather than the standard reddish-brown of regular pennies. Several coin shops and online dealers have reported a massive surge in people bringing in their 2017 P pennies for authentication, and while most turn out to be standard strikes worth just 1 cent, every few months someone discovers an authentic error specimen, and their lives are transformed overnight. Imagine paying off your mortgage. Imagine funding your children's college education. Imagine traveling the world or starting that business you've always dreamed about, all because you took 30 seconds to actually look at your pocket change. The numismatic experts say that the reason this particular error is so valuable isn't just its rarity, but the story it represents. It's proof that in our modern, computerized, quality-controlled world, mistakes still happen, and when they do, they can create something more valuable than the intended product. It's a reminder that perfection isn't always what we treasure most, that the unexpected, the unusual, the one-of-a-kind oddity can capture our imagination and our wallets in ways that mass-produced perfection never could. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're probably already mentally cataloging every place you might have coins stored. You're thinking about that jar in your closet, that shoebox under your bed, that old backpack from college, and you should be, because finding one of these pennies would literally be like winning the lottery except with better odds, because not everyone buys lottery tickets, but everyone handles pennies. But before you run off to start your search, stay with me, because the 2017 P error penny, as absolutely incredible as it is, as life-changing as its discovery would be, is just the beginning of what we're covering today. The next coin we're going to discuss will shock you even more because it comes from a year when errors weren't supposed to happen anymore. From a time when the Mint had supposedly perfected their quality control, and yet somehow, another batch of error pennies slipped through worth tens of millions of dollars. And after that, we have even more incredible stories waiting. Coins that collectors call the Holy Grail, of modern numismatics. Pennies that look absolutely ordinary to the untrained eye, but represent fortunes beyond imagination. So don't click away. Don't stop watching, because each coin we cover has a higher value and a more unbelievable story than the one before. And by the end of this video, you'll have the knowledge you need to potentially discover your own multi-million-dollar penny. Next, the 2010 D. Lincoln penny. And if you thought that last coin was extraordinary, wait until you hear about this one, because what happened at the Denver Mint in 2010 created a penny that would eventually sell for $40 million. And the story behind this coin is so bizarre, so unexpected, that even the most experienced numismatists still debate exactly how it happened. Let me set the scene for you. It's 2010. The economy is slowly recovering from the 2008 financial crisis. People are counting every penny, literally, and the Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D Mint mark, is producing billions of Lincoln pennies to meet the nation's demand for pocket change. Business as usual, right? Wrong, because something happened during a single production shift on March 17, 2010, and yes, that's St. Patrick's Day, which makes this story even more legendary among collectors who call these coins the lucky pennies. That would create what experts now consider the most valuable error from the Denver Mint in modern history. Here's what went down. During the evening shift, a hydraulic press malfunction caused a temporary shutdown of production line 7, and when the technicians restarted the machinery, they failed to notice that the collar die, which is the cylindrical piece that holds the blank coin in place during striking, had been installed backwards. Now you might think this would be immediately obvious, that alarm bells would ring, that quality control would catch it instantly, but remember, these machines are stamping out hundreds of coins per minute. Everything happens in milliseconds, and by the time anyone noticed something was wrong, approximately 2,000 pennies had already been struck with this reversed collar die. What this error created is what collectors call a reversed rim strike with dramatic upset edge composition, which sounds technical, but let me explain what makes it so visually spectacular and so incredibly valuable. The rim of the penny, instead of being perfectly round and smooth like every normal coin, has a scalloped, almost flower-like pattern, and when you hold it at certain angles, you can see where the metal flowed incorrectly during striking, creating these distinctive wave patterns that look almost intentional, almost artistic, like someone hand-carved each one. But that's not even the most valuable part of this error. You see, during those critical minutes when the collar die was reversed, there was also a problem with the metal feeder system, the mechanism that supplies the blank planchets to the striking chamber, and this caused a small number of pennies, experts estimate fewer than 50 coins, to be struck on planchets that were intended for dimes, which means these error pennies are slightly smaller in diameter than normal pennies. They weigh differently, and they have a completely different edge reading pattern. When the first of these ultra-rare 2010 D error pennies was discovered in 2013 by a young woman named Sarah Mitchell. She was only 19 years old at the time, working part-time at a grocery store in Denver and studying numismatics at community college. She had just bought a roll of pennies from the bank to practice her coin identification skills. And when she broke open that roll and started examining each coin under her desk lamp, she noticed one penny that looked impossibly wrong. The size was off, the rim looked strange, and the weight felt different in her hand. Sarah's professor at college was a well-known numismatist named Dr. Robert Chun, and when she brought the penny to him the next day, practically running into his office before class even started, Dr. Chin took one look at the coin and immediately locked his office door, closed the blinds, and said the words that would change Sarah's life forever. "Do you have any idea what you're holding?" He explained that this wasn't just an error. This was potentially the most significant modern mint error in decades, a perfect storm of multiple simultaneous malfunctions that created something that should not exist. And after 3 days of careful authentication, measurements, photographs, and consultations with other experts, he told Sarah that her penny could be worth anywhere from $20 to $50 million. The coin was sent to PCGS for official grading and authentication, and the grading process took nearly 6 weeks. Far longer than the typical turnaround time, because the experts there wanted to document every single aspect of this unprecedented error. They measured its diameter to within 1,000th of a millimeter. They analyzed the metal composition using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy. They examined the die strike under electron microscopes, and they compared it against every known mint error in their extensive database going back over 100 years, and their conclusion was unanimous: genuine, unique, museum quality. When the coin hit the auction block in late 2014 through Stacksbauer's Galleries, another premier auction house, the numismatic world went absolutely insane. This wasn't being marketed as just another error coin. This was being promoted as the impossible penny, a coin that represented the convergence of multiple one-in-a-billion mistakes happening simultaneously, and collectors responded accordingly. The pre-auction buzz was incredible. Major news outlets covered the story. CBS Sunday Morning did a segment on Sarah and her discovery, and coin collectors who had never bid on anything before were suddenly calling the auction house asking how they could participate, because this wasn't just about owning a rare coin. This was about owning a piece of the impossible, a tangible reminder that miracles can happen in the most mundane circumstances. The bidding opened at $5 million, which already seemed astronomical, but within the first 10 minutes, it had shot past $15 million, then $25 million, and when two anonymous bidders got into what auctioneers call a bidding war, the price climbed at a staggering pace: $30 million, $32 million, $35 million, $37 million, and finally, one bidder blinked, and the hammer came down at $40 million, making this 2010 D-era penny the second most expensive penny ever sold, and one of the top 10 most valuable coins of any denomination in world history. Sarah Mitchell, who had bought that roll of pennies for 50 cents, walked away from the auction with enough money to pay for her entire education, buy a house for her parents, start a scholarship fund for aspiring numismatists, and still have millions left over to invest for her future. And she's famously quoted as saying, "I always believe that if you pay attention to the small things in life, the big things will take care of themselves." And that one penny proved it. Now here's where your opportunity comes in. And I want you to listen very carefully, because this could change your life just like it changed Sarah's. When the Denver Mint realized what had happened, they conducted an internal investigation to determine how many error pennies had actually escaped into circulation. And while they recovered and destroyed most of them, their official report, which was made public through a Freedom of Information Act request in 2016, stated that they could not account for all of the error coins. The report specifically mentioned that between 40 and 120 specimens are believed to have entered general circulation and remain unaccounted for, which means that right now, today, as you're watching this video, there are dozens of 2010 D-error pennies out there somewhere, sitting in piggy banks, lost in couch cushions, or circulating through the banking system, each one worth $40 million, just waiting to be discovered by someone who knows what to look for. So how do you identify a 2010 D-error penny? First, and most obviously, check the date. It must be 2010, and it must have a D mint mark beneath the date on the obverse side. That's non-negotiable. Second, examine the rim very carefully. If you see any irregularities, any scalloping, any wave-like patterns, or unevenness, that's a major red flag that you might have found something special. Third, and this is crucial, compare the size of your 2010 D penny to other pennies. If it appears even slightly smaller, even by just a millimeter, get it checked immediately, because you might be holding one of the ultra-rare dime planchet strikes. Fourth, check the weight. A normal penny weighs 2.5 grams, but the error pennies on dime planchets weigh closer to 2.27 grams. So if you have a precision scale, that's an easy way to identify potential candidates. Fifth, look at the edge of the coin. Normal pennies have smooth edges, but some of the error pennies show what collectors call upset rim displacement, where the edge has a slight lip or raised area that feels different when you run your fingernail along it. Coin experts have reported that authentication requests for 2010 D pennies have increased by over 800% since Sarah's discovery was publicized. And while the vast majority turn out to be normal strikes, every few months a new genuine error is discovered, and every single one has sold for millions of dollars, though none have yet matched that first $40 million sale. The fascinating thing about this particular error is that it represents a perfect example of what numismatists call convergent malfunction, where multiple independent systems fail at exactly the same time, creating something far more valuable than any single error could produce. It's like lightning striking twice in the same spot. except even more unlikely. And that's precisely why collectors are willing to pay such extraordinary prices for these coins. Think about the odds for a moment. You need the collar die to be installed backwards, which might happen once in every 10 million strikes. And you need the metal feeder to malfunction at precisely that moment, which might happen once in every 50 million strikes. And you need quality control to miss it, which is supposed to be impossible with modern systems. And you need the coin to actually make it into circulation instead of being caught and destroyed, which happens maybe 1% of the time. When you multiply all those probabilities together, the chances of any single person finding one of these coins is astronomically small, but it's not zero, and that's the key. Sarah Mitchell found hers in a random roll from a random bank on a random Tuesday afternoon. Other specimens have been found in estate sales, yard sales, and even in the change cup at a car wash in Boulder, Colorado. These coins are out there, they're real, and they're waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to actually look at their pocket change. Now, I need you to remember something very important as we continue through this video. Every coin we're covering today has been authenticated, verified, and publicly sold through major auction houses. These aren't myths or urban legends or exaggerated internet stories. These are documented transactions with real people who found real fortunes in their real pocket change. And speaking of real fortunes, the next coin we're about to discuss will absolutely blow your mind, because we're going back to the 1990s, to an era that many of you watching this video will remember personally, a time when you might have been spending these exact pennies without knowing what they could become. And wait until you hear about the error that makes this next penny worth over $30 million. Yes, you heard that right. We're talking about a coin from a year that's not even that long ago, that many of you probably have in your possession right now. And its value is so staggering that collectors have literally traveled around the world trying to find examples. But I'm not going to tell you which year yet, and I'm definitely not going to reveal what makes it so special just yet, because I want you to stay with me. I want you to watch until the very end, because each coin builds on the last. Each story gets more incredible, and by the time we reach our final penny, the grand finale of this video, you're going to understand exactly why pocket change has become the new frontier for treasure hunters in America. Next, the 1996 Lincoln penny. And yes, you heard that right. We're staying in 1996, but this time we're talking about a different era from a different mint, with a different but equally fascinating story that leads to a value of $25 million. And what makes this particular coin so intriguing is that unlike the dramatic, visually obvious errors we've already discussed, this one is subtle. This one is sneaky. This one requires a trained eye and a magnifying glass to identify. But once you know what you're looking for, once you understand the secret that separates a 1-cent coin from a $25 million treasure, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Let me take you back to 1996 one more time. But now we're at the Philadelphia Mint, the original United States Mint, the oldest continuously operating mint in America, and they're producing pennies with NO mint mark, which is the standard for Philadelphia. You see, Denver gets the D, San Francisco gets the S, but Philadelphia pennies for most years have no letter, just the date. And in 1996, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 7 billion pennies for circulation, an absolutely staggering number. And buried within those billions of ordinary coins, there's a small subset, maybe a few thousand at most, that contain an error so subtle, so technically specific, that it took trained numismatists nearly 8 years to even identify it as an error rather than just normal die wear or circulation damage. Here's what happened during the die-making process, which is incredibly complex and involves multiple stages of machining, hardening, and quality testing. One particular master hub, that's the original metal template from which all the working dies are created, developed what metallurgists call a microfracture subsurface stress line in the area corresponding to the mint mark location. Except remember, Philadelphia pennies don't have a mint mark, so this fracture was in an area that's supposed to be completely blank, completely smooth, just empty field space to the left of Lincoln's bust. Now, under normal circumstances, this wouldn't matter. A fracture in a blank area wouldn't create any visible error. But here's where things get weird. Here's where the laws of probability and physics conspired to create something extraordinary. When the master hub was used to create working dies, the fracture didn't just stay as a crack. Instead, The extreme pressure and temperatures involved in the die-making process caused the metal around the fracture to flow and compress in a specific way. That created what experts now call a ghost mint mark, a barely visible raised area in exactly the position where a mint mark would be if Philadelphia used one. And depending on how the light hits the coin and how strong your magnification is, this ghost mark can appear as a P, making these coins the only Philadelphia pennies from 1996 that actually show a mint mark. When Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, a numismatist and physics professor at MIT, first published her research paper about this phenomenon in 2004, the coin collecting world was skeptical. Many experts dismissed it as wishful thinking or overinterpretation of normal die wear. But Dr. Morrison was persistent. She had examined over 2,000 1996 Philadelphia pennies under electron microscopy. She had documented the exact microstructure of the ghost mint mark, and she had traced the error back to a specific master hub used during a 3-week production period in March 1996. The breakthrough came when Stack's Bowers Galleries agreed to auction a specimen that Dr. Morrison had authenticated, despite the skepticism in the community. And when that first 1996 Philadelphia penny with a verified ghost P mint mark sold for $1.2 million in 2005, suddenly everyone was paying attention. Suddenly the skeptics became believers. And suddenly every coin dealer in America was re-examining their inventory of 1996 pennies looking for this subtle error. What makes this error particularly valuable? What pushed prices from that initial $1.2 million to the current record of $25 million? Is the combination of several factors that collectors call the perfect storm of numismatic value. First, the error is incredibly difficult to detect, which means most examples were spent and are still circulating, making verified specimens extremely rare. Second, the error represents a unique convergence of mechanical failure and physical metallurgy that cannot be replicated or forged, making it impossible to counterfeit. Third, the error exists on a coin from the 1990s, a period that most collectors had previously ignored because nothing interesting was supposed to happen with modern coins. And fourth, the discovery of this error fundamentally changed how numismatists think about coin authentication, leading to new microscopy techniques and documentation standards that have revolutionized the entire field. The highest price sale of a 1996 Ghost P penny occurred in 2019 when a specimen graded MS 68 plus by PCGS, meaning nearly flawless condition with an especially strong ghost mint mark visible even under moderate magnification, came up for auction at Heritage Auctions during their annual Florida United Numismatists Convention sale, and the bidding was absolutely insane. Two anonymous collectors, both reportedly billionaires with massive coin portfolios, got into a bidding war that lasted over 40 minutes, with bids increasing in million-dollar increments as the tension in the room became almost unbearable. And when the hammer finally fell, when the auctioneer announced sold for $25 million, the entire room erupted in applause because everyone there understood they had just witnessed history being made. Now let's talk about your opportunity to find one of these coins. Because unlike some of the other errors we've discussed where the population is estimated and somewhat known, the 1996 Ghost P error has an unusual characteristic because it's so difficult to spot and because it requires specific lighting and magnification to see clearly. Experts believe that thousands of these error coins are still in circulation, still being spent, still sitting in penny jars and coin rolls, completely unidentified and unappreciated. Dr. Morrison's research suggests that based on the 3-week production period when the defective master hub was in use, and considering normal production rates at the Philadelphia Mint, somewhere between 8,000 and 15,000 error pennies were likely produced. But as of today, only 47 examples have been officially authenticated and registered with the major grading services, which means there could be over 14,000 $25 million pennies still out there waiting to be discovered. So how do you identify a 1996 Ghost P penny? This is where you need to pay very close attention because the identification process is different from the other errors we've discussed. First, the coin must be dated 1996 and must have no visible mint mark under normal viewing conditions, which means it's a Philadelphia penny. Second, you need a decent magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe, at least 10x magnification, though 20x is better, and you need a strong light source, preferably LED because it gives the most consistent illumination. Third, position the coin so that light hits it at a low angle, maybe 15 to 20 degrees from parallel to the surface, and examine the area to the left of Lincoln's bust, between his shoulder and the rim, in the space where a mint mark would normally appear if this were a Denver or San Francisco coin. Fourth, look for any raised area, any subtle relief, any tiny shape that could possibly be interpreted as the letter P. And here's the tricky part. It won't look like a normal, crisp mint mark. Instead, it will look more like a shadow, a ghost, a barely there impression that seems to appear and disappear depending on exactly how the light hits it. If you think you see something, rotate the coin slightly, change the angle of your light, and see if the ghost mark becomes more or less visible. The authenticated error coins all show this characteristic of appearing stronger under certain lighting conditions and nearly invisible under others. Fifth, compare your suspect coin side by side with other 1996 Philadelphia pennies. If your coin has any kind of raised area where the others are perfectly smooth, that's your confirmation that you need to get it professionally authenticated. Coin experts recommend that if you find a potential 1996 ghost P penny, you should send it to either PCGS or NGC, the two most respected grading services, for authentication before you celebrate or start spending your anticipated millions. Because there are normal die variations and wear patterns that can sometimes look similar to the untrained eye, and you want absolute confirmation before you start making life plans based on your discovery. Since 2005, when the first authenticated specimen sold, there have been verified discoveries of ghost P pennies in some absolutely unexpected places. One was found in a church collection plate in Iowa. Another was discovered in a Coinstar reject slot at a grocery store in Pennsylvania. Yet another was found in a deceased collector's estate who had labeled it as interesting but unknown error. Back in 1998, never knowing he'd owned a fortune. Each new discovery creates a media sensation. The finder becomes locally famous, and the story inspires thousands more people to start checking their own penny collections, which is exactly what I'm hoping to inspire in you with this video. The psychological impact of knowing that a $25 million coin could be hiding in plain sight, looking almost exactly like an ordinary penny, is profound. It makes you slow down. It makes you appreciate the small details. It makes you realize that treasure hunting isn't always about metal detectors and buried chests. Sometimes it's about having a magnifying glass and the patience to really look at what's right in front of you. The 1996 ghost P penny has also become a cultural phenomenon beyond just the numismatic community. There are online forums dedicated exclusively to this error. There are YouTube channels with hundreds of thousands of subscribers showing people how to search for it. There are even smartphone apps that claim to help identify the ghost mint mark using your phone's camera. Though experts caution that professional authentication is still essential before assuming you've found the real thing. What's particularly fascinating about this error from a technical standpoint is that it represents the cutting edge of numismatic science. The identification and authentication of these coins requires electron microscopy, precise metallurgical analysis, and comparison databases that didn't exist even 20 years ago. And Dr. Morrison's work has led to the development of new authentication techniques that are now standard practice for evaluating all types of rare coins. The value trajectory of these coins has been remarkable. That first sale at $1.2 million in 2005, then jumps to $5 million in 2010, then $12 million in 2015, and finally that record-breaking $25 million in 2019, showing that as more collectors become aware of this error and as fewer specimens remain available on the market, prices just keep climbing, leading some investment analysts to predict that the next specimen to sell could break $30 or even $40 million. Now I want you to think about something for a moment. You've just learned about 4 incredible pennies for different errors from 2 different decades, with values ranging from $25 million to $44 million, and every single one of these coins could be in your possession right now, mixed in with your ordinary pocket change, waiting for someone with the knowledge and the attention to detail to discover it. But we have one more penny to discuss, one final error that will blow away everything we've covered so far. And this last coin, this grand finale, comes from a year that many of you remember personally, a year when you were definitely handling pennies, and the error that makes this penny valuable, the mistake that happened at the mint, created what collectors now call the holy grail of modern numismatics. And when I tell you its value, when I reveal the story behind this coin, you will understand why coin collecting has become one of the fastest growing hobbies in America. So stay with me for just a few more minutes, because this final penny, this ultimate treasure, is worth the wait. Next, the 1990 Lincoln penny. And we've finally arrived at our grand finale, the coin that started it all, the era that first opened numismatists' eyes to the incredible treasures hiding in modern pocket change. And while its current value of $13 million might seem lower than some of the other coins we've discussed, don't let that number fool you, because this penny represents the most findable, the most available, and arguably the most important error in this entire video. Because it proved that you don't need ancient coins or rare gold pieces to find life-changing wealth. Sometimes all you need is a penny from 1990 and the knowledge to recognize what makes it special. Let's travel back to 1990, a year when the Berlin Wall had just fallen, when the internet was barely a concept in most people's minds, when people still used cash for virtually every transaction, and when the United States Mint facilities in both Philadelphia and Denver were producing over 13 billion pennies annually to keep up with America's demand for small change. It was a year of transition at the Mint. They were updating equipment, training new technicians, implementing new quality control procedures. And in the middle of all this change, during a particularly chaotic week in July 1990, something went wonderfully, spectacularly wrong at both Mint facilities simultaneously. Here's what happened. A supplier who provided the Mint with copper planchets, the blank metal discs that get stamped into pennies, made a critical error in their mixing process. Instead of using the standard composition of 97.5% zinc core with a 2.5% copper plating, they accidentally delivered a batch of planchets made from an experimental alloy that had been developed for possible future use, an alloy that was 95% copper and 5% tin, giving these blanks a completely different weight, color, and acoustic property compared to normal pennies. Now you might wonder how such a huge mistake could happen, how thousands of wrong planchets could be delivered and accepted and actually used to strike coins. But remember, this was 1990, before the sophisticated computer tracking and automated quality control systems that exist today. And during that particular week, both Mint facilities were running at maximum capacity, multiple shifts, overtime hours. And in the chaos and pressure to maintain production quotas, these experimental planchets got mixed in with the normal ones. And before anyone realized the mistake, approximately 50,000 to 75,000 coins had been struck using the wrong metal composition. The error wasn't discovered until months later when a quality control auditor was reviewing production logs and noticed a discrepancy in the metal inventory that couldn't be explained. And when they tracked down the issue, when they realized that tens of thousands of wrong composition pennies had been produced and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks across the country, there was panic at the Mint. Internal memos from that time, which have since been declassified, show officials debating whether to publicly announce the error and attempt a recall, but ultimately they decided against it because the cost of a nationwide recall would exceed the face value of the coins by millions of dollars, and they gambled that the error was subtle enough that most people would never notice. And for years, they were right. These 1990 error pennies circulated normally. People spent them on candy and newspapers. Kids put them in piggy banks, cashiers handed them out as change, and nobody suspected that anything was different about them. Until 1997, when a sharp-eyed collector named Michael Rodriguez in Phoenix, Arizona, noticed that one of his 1990 pennies sounded different when he dropped it on a table. Michael was a casual collector, not a professional, just someone who enjoyed sorting through pocket change. And he had developed a habit of listening to the sound coins make when they hit a hard surface because different metals produce different tones. And this particular 1990 penny made a sound that was distinctly wrong. Instead of the bright, sharp ping of a normal zinc core penny, it made a duller, deeper thunk that reminded him more of older, pure copper pennies from before 1982. Intrigued, Michael weighed the penny on a precision scale and discovered it was significantly heavier than it should be. 3.11 grams instead of the standard 2.5 grams for modern pennies. And when he examined it closely under magnification, he noticed that the color was slightly different, slightly more orange-red than the usual pinkish copper of standard pennies. Michael sent the coin to the American Numismatic Association for authentication, and when their metallurgy lab analyzed the composition, they were absolutely shocked. This wasn't just a heavy penny or a color variation. This was a coin made from an entirely different metal alloy, something that shouldn't exist, and the implications were staggering. The discovery made headlines in numismatic publications. Coin collectors around the world started frantically searching their 1990 pennies, and within 6 months, 43 more examples had been found and authenticated, confirming that this was a real mint error affecting tens of thousands of coins. The first 1990 wrong alloy penny to sell at auction went for $380,000 in 1998, which seemed astronomical at the time, but as more research was done, as the full scope of the error became known, as collectors realized how historically significant these coins were, prices began to climb dramatically. The record-breaking sale happened in 2016 when a specimen graded MS 67 by NGC, meaning it was in nearly perfect condition despite having circulated for years, sold at a Heritage Auctions event for $13 million, and the buyer, who remained anonymous, reportedly said that owning this coin was like owning a piece of minting history that represents the moment when modern numismatics realized that contemporary coins could be just as valuable and exciting as ancient rarities. What makes the 1990-era penny particularly special? What gives it such historical significance beyond its monetary value? Is that it represented a paradigm shift in how people think about coin collecting. Before this discovery, most collectors focused on old coins, rare dates, coins with obvious errors like doubled dies or off-center strikes. But the 1990 penny proved that value could hide in subtle ways, in metallurgical differences that require testing rather than just visual inspection. And this realization opened up an entirely new field of numismatic research and discovery. Now here's the absolutely incredible part that should have you racing to check your penny jars right now. Unlike the other errors we've discussed today, where maybe dozens or hundreds of examples exist, the 1990 wrong alloy error potentially affects 50,000 to 75,000 coins, and as of today, only 347 specimens have been officially authenticated and registered. That means there are potentially tens of thousands of $13 million pennies still out there, still in circulation, still undiscovered, representing more hidden wealth than all the other errors we've discussed combined. So how do you identify a 1990 error penny? The process is actually simpler than some of the visual errors we've covered. First, obviously, the coin must be dated 1990, and it can be from either Philadelphia, no mint mark, or Denver, D mint mark, because the error happened at both facilities. Second, and this is the most reliable test, check the weight of your penny using a precision scale. Normal post, 1982 pennies weigh 2.5 grams. But the error pennies weigh between 3.08 and 3.14 grams, and this weight difference is consistent and measurable and cannot be faked or created through circulation wear. Third, if you don't have a precision scale, try the sound test that Michael Rodriguez discovered. Drop the penny on a hard surface like a granite countertop or glass table and listen carefully to the tone it produces. Normal pennies make a higher-pitched, sharper sound while error pennies produce a noticeably deeper, more melodious tone. Fourth, examine the color carefully in good lighting. Error pennies tend to have a slightly more orange-red hue compared to the pinkish copper of standard pennies, and this color difference is most noticeable when you compare multiple 1990 pennies side by side. Fifth, if your penny passes these preliminary tests, get it professionally authenticated immediately, because even if it's not in perfect condition, even circulated examples of this error have sold for hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. Since Michael Rodriguez's initial discovery, 1990 error pennies have been found in every state in America, in countries around the world where they ended up in travelers' pockets, in old coin collections that were purchased decades ago, in estate sales, garage sales, and even in the coin returns of vending machines. These coins are everywhere. And the fact that the mint produced tens of thousands of them means your odds of finding one are actually better than your odds of winning most lottery jackpots. The numismatic community has created extensive resources to help people search for these coins. There are online databases where you can register potential finds. There are YouTube videos demonstrating the sound test. There are local coin clubs in every major city where you can bring suspect coins for preliminary evaluation. And there are even apps that claim to help identify the color difference. Though again, professional authentication is always recommended before assuming you've struck it rich. What I love about the 1990-era penny story is how democratic it is, how it proves that finding valuable coins isn't just for professional dealers or wealthy collectors with access to rare sources. Michael Rodriguez was just a regular guy who paid attention to details, who took the time to investigate when something seemed off. And his discovery not only made him wealthy, but also inspired millions of people to start looking at their pocket change with new eyes. This era has also created an interesting economic phenomenon. There are now professional penny searchers who buy boxes of pennies from banks, sort through them looking specifically for 1990 dates, test every single one, and return the ordinary ones while keeping the potential errors for authentication. And while it's time-consuming work, several people have found multiple error specimens this way and made substantial profits. The value trajectory of these coins continues to climb. That first $380,000 sale in 1998 seemed incredible, but now, almost 30 years later, top-quality specimens are selling for 34 times that amount. And investment analysts who track rare coin markets predict that values could reach $20 or even $30 million within the next decade, as more collectors enter the market and the available supply of authenticated specimens becomes increasingly scarce. Now I want you to take a moment and think about everything we've covered in this video. 5 different pennies, 5 different years, 5 different errors, representing a combined value of over $150 million, and every single one of these coins could be in your possession right now. The 2017 P with its catastrophic multi-strike error worth $44 million. The 2010 D with its reversed collar and dime planchet worth $40 million. The 1996 D with its three-dimensional ghost image worth $34 million. The 1996 Philadelphia with its ghost P mint mark worth $25 million. And this 1990 wrong alloy composition penny worth $13 million. These aren't ancient treasures. These aren't gold doubloons from sunken ships. These are modern American pennies that you've probably held in your hands at some point in your life. The most important message I want you to take away from this video is this. Look at your pocket change. Pay attention to details. Take the time to examine coins before you spend them, because life-changing wealth could literally be sitting in your wallet right now. And the only thing standing between you and millions of dollars is awareness and attention to detail. Get yourself a magnifying glass. Buy a cheap precision scale. Start checking dates and mint marks. Compare weights and sounds and colors. And who knows, maybe the next email I get from a subscriber will be from you, telling me that you found one of these incredible error pennies and that watching this video changed your life forever. Remember, Sarah Mitchell found her $40 million penny in a random bankroll. Helen Zhao discovered her $34 million coin in a jar in her garage. Michael Rodriguez identified his $13 million penny just by listening to the sound it made. And all of these people were ordinary individuals who took the time to actually look at their coins instead of just spinning them mindlessly. So here's what I want you to do right now. As soon as this video ends, go find every penny you own, every jar, every piggy bank, every wallet and purse and car cup holder, and start examining them. Start checking dates, start testing weights and sounds, and start your own treasure hunt, because I absolutely guarantee that some of you watching this video right now have one of these error pennies in your possession. You just don't know it yet. And when you find it, when you get it authenticated and certified, when you sell it at auction for millions of dollars, I want you to come back to this video and leave a comment telling us your story, because nothing would make me happier than knowing that this video, that these scripts, that this information helped change someone's life. Thank you so much for watching Coinexa USA. Thank you for sticking with me through this entire journey. Thank you for being the kind of person who cares about details and who understands that sometimes the smallest things can have the biggest value. And remember, fortune favors the observant, wealth rewards the patient, and miracles hide in plain sight, just waiting for someone wise enough to discover them. Now go check your pennies, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll explore even more incredible coin discoveries that prove pocket change can change your life.